waiting for the yesteryears to show. Waiting for the yesteryears to show. Promise you nothing the same. All I can ask for, I will never do such. This can be all you never dreamed. I the yesteryears to show. And I promise you, judge of those with authority. Authors of the reading and rights and the left of the party. Bipartisan for the F-feathering and Ephesians and feeding the wretched. Rights in the left-handed and amputees. Insurance for the chasing and the naked breasts and the feeding the formula for the former day. Against those for the sudden to prosper the parodies. Parole the circumstances for the circulate to the circular. Roll out for those of the road for the multiple roles and models and multi-rules for the municipalities for the anomalies and the monopolize of the currency to free defrect the money. More of the game for the dice of the comparison. Unison for the unity when they unite the ambiguity. Entry to the integrity, griance in the jurisdictions. Describe to the definition, ignited for the living words that goes to spells. Indent for the greatest of the DJ letters and the monopolies, the moon dumping and anatomies. Apologizing for the offending of the them to defending offenses that borderline them to the proper nouns and pronouncing the eights and finger for the hands in the marriage. Marriage and agitated for the virgins and brothels and the apostles, the posts of the books and newsletters and Facebook for the literate for the rates and the stars that gives them freedom for the be undumbfounded again for the forgotten forefathers who forgiveness and entitled for the authors who read it but only lie to them silently in libraries. Rarely expose light righteousness unless it was meaningful. Less vengeance, forgiving, forgave the gratitude and heights and the latitude to levitate for the litigate. Eliminating illumination, Illuminati for the nuts, the germs and the Germans. Double man's picture for the man and stuff for the letting, the strife for the any man for the aviation, the plane for the planning, and over the traveling transport for the transgressions and grievances, deadments and hangmen and penises over there, penetrating the vagina for the canals and boating in troubled waters and boating there for conniving heights. Conduct, split behavior, the powder to the behind those beasts. Hinder the highs in the trees and treat them accordingly. Christ and justice to higher men in the highest of the clouds, shadows above the darkened pigmentations, legislative latitudes and the latest and legislative of the government meant to enforce them to be enforced by implying the Plymouth Hard and the God for the passage of the labyrinth and the mazes and bookcase, man for the breach and the judge of the those with authority, authors of the reading and rights and the love of the party, bipartisan for the F-feathering and Ephesians and feeding the wretched. Rights in the left-handed and amputees, and the shirt for the chasing and the naked breasts and the feeding the formula for the woman. Tell me that you love me. We'll just be so caring. Know that I am. Know your limitation. Before they start to fade. Never let me know. Please just be kind. Tell me when you're angry. Rub me just so gently. I just need to know.
and to prosper the parodies. Parole the circumstances for the circulate to the circular. Roll out for the those of the road for the multiple roles and models and modes. Rules for the municipalities for the anomalies and the monopolize of the currency to free diffract the money. More of the game for the dice of the comparison. Unison for the unity when they unite the ambiguity. Intrigue to the integrity agreements in the jurisdictions. And describe to the definition ignited for the living words that coast spells. Indent for the creators of the DJ letters and the monopolies, the moon double analogies. Apologizing for the offending with the thems of defending defenses that borderline them to the proper nouns and pronouncing the aids of finger for the hands in the marriage. Marriage and agitated for the virgins and brothels and the apostles and the posts and the books and newsletters and Facebook for the literate for the rates of the stars and that gives them freedom for the be undumbfounded and again for the forgotten forefathers of forgiveness and entitled for the authors who read it but only lie to them silently in libraries. Rarely expose light righteousness unless it was meaningful. Less vengeance, forgiving. Forgave the gratitude and heights and the latitude to levitate for the litigate, illuminating illumination, Illuminati for the Nazis, the Germans and the Germans. Double man's picture for the man of stuff for the landing, the strife for the any man for the aviation, the plane for the planning, and over the traveling transport for the transgressions and grievances and deadments and hangmen and penises and when they penetrating the vagina for the canals and boating in troubled waters and boating them for conniving acts, conducts, the behavior of the pounder to the behind those beasts. Hinder the highs and the trees for the treat them accordingly for the patriarchy, the archives and dues of the libraries and rarely spoken about the truth and bound and bottom them spoken the retirees and the rebuttal for the retrieve of those grievances and adding the morning pills of the villages and the ages of wisdom and the ignorance and raising the tournament for the torment meant to be rare for the scales of the waves of the judgment and court to the heavens to the gates and the thinking the gators and the lower for that for the court to float the quarter ships and stinking the countertops and counterfeiting the fits to obedience and the obeying the penalties. Those penalties for the ties to raise to finish the lines and the lineage and eager to win those whenever it diminishes the dishes degrades and knows the cemetery for commentary for this is water to terry the tail the scale the fish out to the nets to the cast the embarrassment bars graphs prism crystallization for the separated rate agenda age agenda for the segregated for the seeds and segments segregating for the culture for the colderness of tide plans for the land for the eastern surrealism for the off-road for the die for the motivation and the motives of the modern generation and velocity for the cities of the corpus of the animosity for the catastrophe for the trophy for the could be the case of the easy and wise and the easy no easy pain and pictures and the easy the silly to give you memories of the bond and breezy days astray enough for the astronomers and the deity for the heights of the Heisman tropical thunder for the weather for the trophy the Heisman with the envy and the icon.
Well, I would say you were a poem, a love puddle, a true love for treasure. For this is not the house to behold, for this would be the something and not for the coffin that contains it. A real beloved, for this would be the one who was unique within one, for the beginning and for the end. For this would be the one to find that, for the no longer expect for anything else. It would be the manifestation, none for the mystery. For this would be the low, for the state, for the feeling, for the dependent, for the none, and either be the none for the earth, for month, and this the slave to that moment. For this to be the dead, for the state, for the who does that bidding, for when it wills. That body becomes spirit. That mechanism becomes whole. Unseen like the hologram line and that beneath the polygram for the weighted on instead of for the standing next to that for the pillagers for the agent, not the man, the pilgrim for the who, the Instagram for the who, the sundial for the phonograph of a man without the contraction and that for the sheep and shepherd. Mary had a little lamb, but over with her you went and went. Wept that but the slept for the born again, for the shepherd that departed for the embarking, and for tree like the sun, for the aboriginal, for the Abraham, for the ham of the saints, that the fame for the that, for the host house of the Jerusalem, for the salam of the lamb, for the interior, for the motives of this, be motivated for the inside of that Bethlehem, for the synonymous sinners and synonyms, trees of life, and acronyms and the embodied for the son of the man, for the sons abbreviated, for the alleviation of allegation of that, for the given to him, for the not, for the no, not, and not for the life of the Noah's ark, for the who, to be crucible, I had a crucible, crumble before them when they made it, for the even in the aftermath, for the trail, for the need, for the trader, for the traders, those are to be the owner, the dreaded Negro, attitude, like dread, aftermath for the additional contrast to the labels of the fables, of the periods and sentences and the signs and times and syllables and the canes and the ables and the ability to remain as steeples and define the view sight. Teachers and pupils are not hiding behind pulpits, and the holy church are not talking about the fruit for the tormented for the jungle juices that was a fermented for the folly for the hallucinated for the supernatural experience. Expired before them 12 tribes and conspiracies and lighted lines between believing and belittling the big man for the under the sun. Big up that green giant for the rest of the within them, for the seeds of the forest of the mountain men, and amen, and omens, and those were the forefathers that forgave them, and the begotten kings that I got to the acronyms, and the Game of Thrones of the stagnant dragons, and fire that look to the higher in spirit and inspire. Retirement and mental enslaving environment to the invitations that track back to the invited with them, and posted it into stamps and that for the crowds to behold the pale Caucasian that behold the pale horseman or two. Walk in the course on that track with the plane, or horsing around with the earth for the discipline of the Martians and immortalized in the baptism of the John the Baptist, and that understood the core over the circumstances that watered those fishy tails. Your wings in fairyland, and I fly by with the NASA and Ford. Gave your government for the Helios helicopters, yo. Human with the grounded with the capitalist punishment, yo. Serve justice and not deportation for the minority ice. Enslavement to the reinforcement, the enforcement, and for the return Jedi, them blind to the teaching of the preachers and voters and teachers and preach those and themes. Templates to the prayer to the temple and them. Con men for the contemplate to full fulfillment. Embellish the selfish and then with the refugees that dumb and the wise eyes of the wisdom and the conundrum. You'll beat that one for them for the victory, the victimized, and those are the idiots and the idolized, and these that withstand for the salt idolized. Table elements that's a distance and ties and violent peanut glancing with the confusing of the confidence of the security for the insecure men for the sin of superiors, and these are the each paragraph that show them for the record for the human behavior for the oppression, the oppressor, that's to get the brink of the irony. Sleeping with a friend, winkles and gesture to impress the highness and the liking it, and these would be the liking of the Instagram instantly instant to the lie for the under the bars that would grip the hands of those generations generally genifying those that define for the outcomes of the coming inside of them for the impregnated with owner nations of the generation is generally rallying the owner raptors of the Britalians. Soil cultivated underneath them permanently, manipulative, mandating Gregorian calendars for the Marie American Pie for the polygraph, and this test that's a study for the Mandela for mandates of the manipulation for the karate cuties and orange those over the under the flags and flagrant ranting chants, and those are enhancing hangmen with the letters and questioning marks.
Well, I would say you were a poem, a love puddle, a true love for treasure, for this is not the house to behold, for this would be the something and not for the coffer that contains it, a real beloved, for this would be the one who was unique within one, for the beginning of the end, for this would be the one to find that, for the no longer expect for anything else to be the manifestation, none for the mystery, for this to be the low, for the state, for the feeling, for the dependent, for the none, and I then be the none for the nothing, month, and this the slave to that moon, for this to be the bid, for the state, for the who does that bidding, for when it wills. That body becomes spirit. That mechanism becomes whole. Unseen like the hologram line, and that need be the polygram for the waited on instead of for the standing next to that, for the pillagers, for the agent, not the man, the pilgrim, for the who, the Instagram, for the who, the sundial, for the phonograph of a man without the contraction, and that for the sheep and shepherd. And Mary had a little lamb, but over whither he ran and went. And wept that, but slept for the born again, for the shepherd that departed for the embarking of a tree like the sun, of the aboriginal, for the Abraham, for the ham of the saints, is at the fame for the that, for the house of this Jerusalem, for the salam of the lamp, for the interior, for the motives of this, be motivated for the inside of that Bethlehem, for the synonymous sinners and synonyms, trees of life, and acronyms and the embodied for the son of the man, for the sons abbreviated, for the alleviation of allegation of that, for the given to him, for the not, for the no, not to not, for the life of the Noah's ark, for the who, the crucible, idol crucible, crumbled before them when they made it, for the even in the aftermath, for the trail, for the deep, for the traitor, for the traitors, those are to be the owner, the dreaded Negro, attitude, light dread, aftermath for the additional contrast and the labels of the fables, and the periods and sentences and the signs and times and syllables and the canes and the ables and the ability to remain as steeples and then find a view sight. Teachers and pupils are not hiding behind pulpits, and the holy church are not talking about the fruit, but the tormented for the jungle juices that was a fermented for the folly, for the hallucinated, for the supernatural experience. Expired before them 12 tribes of Judah, conspiracies and lighted alliance between believing and belittling and the big man for the under the sun. Big up that green giant for the rest of it within them, for the seeds of the forest of the mountain men, and amen, and omens, and those are the forefathers that forgave them, and the begotten kings that I got to the acronyms, and the Game of Thrones to the stagnant dragons, and fire that look to the higher in the spirit and inspire. Retirement and mental enslaving environment to the invitations that track back to the invited with them, and posted it in the stamps and that for the crowds to behold the pale Caucasian that behold the pale horseman and true. Walking a course on that track with the plane, or horsing around with the earth for the distance of the Martians and immortalized in the baptism of the John the Baptist that understood the core over the circumstances that watered those fishy tails. Your wings in fairyland and I fly by with a NASA for it. Gave your government for the Helios helicopters, yo. Human with the ground and with the capitalist punishment, you'll serve justice and not deportation of the minority ice. Enslavement to the reinforcement and enforcement, and for the return Jedi, then blind to the teaching of the teachers and folders and teachers and preach those and themes. Templates to the prayer to the temple, and then con men for the contemplate full fulfillment. And bellows the selfish, and then millions of the refugees that dumb, and the wise eyes and the wisdom and the conundrum. You'll beat that one for the them for the victory, the victimized, and those are the idiots and the idolize, and these that withstand for the salt idolize. Table elements that's a distance and sometimes I find a peanut glancing with the confusing and the confidence of the security for the insecure men for the sin of superiors. And these are each paragraph of the show them for the record for the human behavior, for the oppression, the press, the to get the brink of the irony. Sleeping with a friend, winkles and gestures to impress the highness and I liking it, and these would be the liking of the Instagram answer the answer to the line for the one of the bars that have a grip.